Welcome everyone, and a good Erev Yom Tov as we get ready for the Zman Simchosenu, the time of joy, which is the festival of Succos, and we are now with the special segment known as for the Shabbos table. This week is a very special segment for the Shabbos Sukkahs table. This shir, which is made possible all over the world, carried on so many different mediums, is made possible through one family, the Reuben family, who gives a grant for this shir, and they also dedicated the main shir this week with a request to Hashem that they should be zeicher to a ben zacher. So we're going to learn for the Reuben family, first that they should have a piska tava, a guten kvittel in all areas, and they should be zeicher this year for a ben zacher, a healthy ben zacher. Hashem has given us a tremendous privilege that besides the Mitzvah of Sukkah, which is a unique mitzvah, in the payat of the second day of Yom Tov, it says, Bal tehei mitzvah sukkah kala beinecha. Let not the mitzvah of Sukkah be light in your eyes. Ki keneged kol mitzvah secha, das chukaiseh shkula, for it corresponds to all the mitzvahs. It's very poetic. So the first question we should ask is, why would we think that the mitzvah of Sukkah should be kala? Why would we think that it should be light in our eyes? So one would say, well, Rabbi Weiss, it's a Gemara in Masechtas Avodah Zarah. The Gemara says it's a mitzvah kala, and Rashi explains she'ein bo chisoron kis. Doesn't cost, because in the olden days, the sukkah was put up from the psailis of the geirin and the Yaakov, from the residue of the threshing floor and the wine press. You know, there is a prerequisite that if the schach is a keli, is a utensil, it's puzzle. It's no good. The very identity of the schach is that it's useless. And we made it out of psailis garin v'yakov, so that's why it's ein bo chisoron kis. You make it from throwaway, and that's why initially, when they came out with the sukkah mats, people were very, very hesitant because the very name seems to denote that it's puzzle. Because if it's a mat, it's purposeful. It's no good. That's why if you look at your schach, it says that it's made specially l'shem schach, that it's not a mat, because otherwise it won't be good. But today, it's very hard to look at a sukkah as ein bo chisoron kis. People spend inordinate amounts of money on the sukkah. And that's besides the fact that people end up building thousands and thousands and $1,000 of a deck in order to put up the sukkah. And then they need to have electricity, and then they need to have a rain roof. But there's another reason why a person would think that a sukkah is a mitzvah kala. And that is because you'll say, what am I doing? I'm not doing anything different. I'm eating the same chicken soup. I'm eating the same stuffed cabbage. I'm eating the same, when I have a matzah, I'm eating a matzah. I'm lighting a menorah. I'm shockling a lulav and ask, what am I doing here? I don't have in my hands a chefza shel mitzvah. So one would think, I'm really not getting my hands into anything. So therefore, the Python says, don't think that way. To the contrary, you're bringing your whole body into the mitzvah. Unlike other mitzvahs that correspond to different avarim of the body, this mitzvah envelops your entire body in the mitzvah. Baltei mitzvah sukkah kalabeinecha ki keneged kol mitzvah yiseh das chukah yiseh shkula. Because this corresponds to all the mitzvahs you're bringing, and that's why it's such a healthy mitzvah. You know, just like when we say, the reason why people shuckle by davening is because it says, Kol atzmaisai tamarna Hashem michamaycha. I want to say with all my bones, Hashem, who is like you? I want to get, like the Klosberg Rebbe used to say, with all Ramach Eivarim V'shin Samach Gidin. I want to get all of myself. When we go into the sukkah, we're bringing all of ourselves into the sukkah. You might say, Rabbi Weiss, now that you brought it up, I'm really puzzled. I'm really confused. If the sukkah is to represent the Anoni Yaakov, the clouds of glory, what we call the Tzela de Mehemnusa, the shadow of faith, if it represents the Shechina, so much so that even Yitzchak, who is an Oyla Tamima and can't go out of Eretz Yisrael, is allowed to enter the rarefied atmosphere of the sukkah, then why should it be from garbage? From the psilis of the Gairin and the Yaakov. You know, somebody would ask, you know, it's kind of strange. It's kind of strange that when we want to depict the shadow of our God, we use garbage. We use useless material. It seems to be very insulting. How do we understand that? So we're gonna put together a little tapestry over here. We know that Pesach is Keneged Avram. Pesach, the Zman of Emunah, when Hashem took us out of His people, out of Mitzrayim to be His people. V'lakachti eschem li la'am. So that's Avram. The next Yom Tov Shavuos is Yitzchak. And Sukkos is Yaakov. Yaakov nosa Succos. Yaakov has an interesting side to him. Rabbi Gedalia Shor, Zech Tzadik L'Vracha Zchus Young and Aleinu, the previous Rosh Hashiva of Torah V'das, the one who they used to call one of the first truly American-born Gedalim. He says we have a bit of a paradox. Yaakov is known as the Bechir Sheba Avos, the choice one of the Avos. He's the pinnacle, the zenith. Yaakov is the fusion of the Chesed of Avram and the Gevura of Yitzchak, making Tiferes. Yaakov is Torah, Keneged Kulam. Yet while Avram gets Shachris and Yitzchak gets Mincha, Yaakov gets Mariv. Tfilas Mariv is only a Rishus. Compared to Shachris and Mincha, it's only optional. Avram, he gets the Korban Tamid Shel Shachris. The Korban Tamid. Yitzchak gets the carbon tamid shel bein habayim. Yaakov gets the aktoris eivarim uptarim, the smoking up of the limbs and the fats, which again is not ma'akiv. It doesn't invalidate the carbon. It's not a necessary component. There's kapara without it. Why is Yaakov always getting that which is secondary? That which is not so important. Rav Gedalia Shor says that when Yaakov came and he saw the vision of the ladder, Hashem caused the sun to set early. It was a sign for Yaakov to stay there. And for the first time in 14 years, Yaakov went to sleep. He didn't sleep the 14 years that he was in Shem Ve'ever. I always say, if you want to have a dream like the ladder, which is studied through the millennia by millions of people, the way to do it is not to sleep for 14 years. Then you too could have a special dream. So it says when Yaakov lay down, Hashem folded all of Eretz Yisrael underneath Yaakov, that he should acquire all of Eretz Yisrael. So Rav Gedalia Shor says that's not the way Kinyan Karka works. Kinyan Karka works that Rafik Bapursa, you make an improvement in part of the land, you acquire all the land. Why did Hashem have to fold it all under Yaakov? So Rav Gedalia Shor says that Yaakov's job, Yaakov was at the level that his job was to infuse Kedusha even in those parts of Eretz Yisrael which are very, very not holy. They took Rechaim Diesendorf and put it under Yaakov. They put certain streets of Tel Aviv and put it. Yaakov taught us how to be Mekadesh the Gashmias. That was Yaakov's role. That's why Yaakov worked for Lavan. He was in the house of Lavan. He wasn't just in the base of Medrash Shem Ve'ever. For 20 years, he worked in the house of Lavan. And Yaakov showed us how to be Mekadesh the Gashmias. Im Lavan garti v'tayag mitzvah shamarti. That's the sukkah. We go into a special, rarefied, controlled environment of the sukkah. Now, I call it deliberately a controlled environment, like the Chavetz Chaim says, God forbid to get angry in the sukkah. This is a place where you're together with the Shekhinah. Remember, we don't invite the Inshpizen to our home any time in the year. Our home is not a controlled environment. The sukkah is a controlled environment. In that controlled environment, we eat, and we think to eat properly. Not just for the lust of eating. It's okay to enjoy the food. Enjoy the brisket. Enjoy the veal. Enjoy the carp, the whitefish, the salmon, the branzini. But eat, first of all, with the machshava, to fulfill the mitzvah of Sukkah. The Bach says it's important to tell your children this, talking about for the Shabbos Sukkah table. The Bach says, tell your children that you have to think about the Anon Yaakov. It says that's the mitzvah. That means the Anon Yaakov. Without thinking that, that's why I wanted already for 40 years. I'm saying this in public for 40 years. I wanted to make sukkah decorations Clouds. I wanted to make a whole line, clouds with a light in it, different colored clouds, and an amudei eish, pillars of fire, because, I mean, that's what you're supposed to think. If you don't think about the Anani covered, you're not yotzei the mitzvah. That's already a different eating with thought. Then you could get more sophisticated and think that in 40 years we traveled be'eretz lo yizruah. 3 million people would have died many times. There was nothing. The babies would have been dehydrated, we would have died. But we had a miraculous be'er and we had miraculous mun. So when we eat, we think of the mun. When we drink, we think about the be'er. That's what the Chidah says. The Mishnah, everybody asks, why did Hashem only make a zecher for the Anani HaKavod? Why not for the mun and the be'er? So the Chidah says different reasons. One reason is because we can't make a zecher. We don't have a food that came down from heaven. We don't have a food that tastes like anything we wanted. And they learned that the be'er also tastes like any drink. The schach does give shade. But the Mishnah Berurah says, Chafetz Chaim, Zech Tzadik L'Bracha, says that the Anani HaKavod came first, and we should think of it, and it should be a spark plug that we should think about the other miracles. There is another famous pshat, which it deserves its own shir, and that is that the Anani HaKavod was the only thing that we got without complaining. For food we complained, for drink we complained. We don't make a commemoration, l'doros, for something that we complained about. For the Anani HaKavod we didn't complain. Got it without complaint, that's why we make a zeicha l'doros. But now let's come full circle. That's why the Anani HaKavod is made from psilus. Because the message of the Sukkah is we take the psilus of life, that which is secondary, eating, sleeping, talking, and we're mekadesh that. That's the role of Yaakov. Yaakov takes Marav, which is a Rishus, he's Mekadesh the Marav. He takes the limbs and the fats, which is secondary, he's Mekadesh it. He's Mekadesh every area of Eretz Yisrael. That's one of the jobs. We hope that our hanhaga with our family, at the table, we think, what can we say by the table? This is not just any table, we could talk about politics in the shul. This is a sukkah. We're together with the Ishpiza. We're under the Anani HaKavod. It's teaching us how to live. Oh, it's 7 days of teaching us how to live. That at the beginning of the year, it's teaching us how to live differently. But I want to talk to you now about the other tremendous privilege that Hashem gave us. He gave us the privilege of the Arba Minim, of the Esrig, the Lulav, the Hadas, and the Arav. The Medrash says that as we prepare for when the final verdict is given over to the angels to carry out on Hoshana Rabbah, such a holy day, Hoshana Rabbah, in Satmar, Frierdiker Satmar Rebbe, it was like another Yom Kippur. They barely had time to go home and break the fast before Shmini Atzeres. Preparing for that final issuing of the verdicts to be carried out, Hashem says, I'm giving you 4 minim that correspond to 4 very vital parts of the body. The Esrog corresponds to the heart. The lulav corresponds to the spine. The adasim correspond to the eyes. And the arava corresponds to the mouth. Take the esrig, which is daima l'leiv, shake it, fulfill the mitzvah, say with it, Ana Hashem hoishiana, save me please, and let it atone for the sins of the heart, for sins of jealousy, for sins of hate, hatred in the heart, for sins of bearing grudges. And we said, for sins of not paying attention in davening. Then we take the lulav. The lulav is the spine. The spine, which bends down to Hashem in thanks. Please, Hashem, forgive me all those times that I said moedim without kavanah. All those olenus that I bowed down and I wasn't even paying attention to anything that I said. We take the hadas and we shake it and say, Ana Hashem Hashirna, and we say, especially in our generation, Hashem, forgive me for the sins of having wicked eyes, gawking at things that I shouldn't be gawking at, scrolling at things where I shouldn't be wandering. We take the arava, we shake it and we say, Hashem, forgive me for what I said with my mouth. For I know as devarim that I said to my husband or my wife, hurtful words. For lashon hara that I gossiped about people. For falsehoods that I said, for secrets that I revealed. For screaming. For not learning. So I ask you a basic question. Why don't we have a fruit or a nut that looks like the ears? Our ears don't need kapara? Why don't we have a fifth min to shake, to atone for what we listen to? I haven't found, personally, a very good answer to this, but I have my own suggestion. And I wanted to say that perhaps we atone for the ears with the 100 kailos on Rosh Hashanah. When we listen to the shofar, we use the shmiya of the shofar, that atoned 100 times over for what we listen to. But now let me ask you a different question. Why don't we have something keneged the moyach, the brain? The brain? It seemed to be it's very important to have the brain in mind. So in the Sefer Doyesh Toiv, he quotes from a Rav Volach. It's what, maybe Rav Wallach. He quotes an interesting answer. He says, the mind, shaneshama shebemoichi, the mind is good. The mind is our core goodness. That's elikim bara es adam yasher. It's just the timtum halev, the heart that's chaymed, einayim royos, and the leiv is chaymed. It's just the heart and the eyes that get us into trouble. The mayach doesn't need the Ana Hashem Hashiyana. We need to work on the heart. We need to work on the heart that gets gestupt. I told you this once, that if a non-religious Jew says, I'm willing to accept one thing, so Rav Chaim Kanievsky says, Shabbos. Shaka Keneged Kol HaTorah Kula. The Lubavitcher Rebbe said kashrus. Because when you don't eat kosher, it's metamtem esalev. And when it gestupt the heart, you can't do anything. People, they have blocked up hearts. We have to open our hearts. That's what when we have the esrig and we say, Ana Hashem Hoshiyana, we're asking Hashem to open our hearts. So we don't have the ears because we already have the shofar. We don't have the mind because the mind is good. That's the chelik elikami mal. It's what our hearts do to the mind. What our eyes do to, that's why it says, that's what we need. At the same time, of course, we don't only shake by Ana Hashem Hoshiyana. We also shake by Hoidul Hashem Ki Tov Ki Le'olam Chasdai. We mentioned in the main shir that the heart beats every day 115,000 times. In a year, the heart beats 41,400,000 times. When we take that esrog, we say, Haidul Hashem Ki Tov. Thank you, Hashem, for my heart. Thank you, Hashem, for my eyes. I don't have floaters, I don't have macular I don't have a wet retina. I don't have cataracts. Oh, your spine, I don't have back pain. I don't have sciatica. I don't have slip discs. The mouth. I'm not going every minute to root canals. I don't need dentures. Haidul Hashem Ki Tov. When we think about the spine, there's a Gemara in Avodah Zarah. The Gemara says in Avodah Zarah that there are certain fish that don't have a spine. Those fish cannot swim against the current. In life as a Jew, we have to swim against the current of the time. There are all kinds of currents. It could be a current of immodesty. There could be a current of wasting life away with different types of entertainments. There's all kinds of currents. We need to have a shedra, we need to have a spine. That's why we make the bracha on the lulav. It's so important not to be spineless when it comes to Avodas Hashem. So we take these privileges, the sukkah, the lulav, the esrig, the hadas, and the rava, we use them mindfully. That merit, Hashem should bless us all with a real Piska Tava. I want to mention that I would like to get some new blood in dedicating the shiurim. Next week we will have a shir about Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. I'm looking for a sponsor. Last week we didn't have one. I had to ask my sponsor for the Shabbos table. We really thank the Rubin family. If you would like to sponsor next week's share, 718-916-3100. It's 718-916-3100. rmmwsi@aol.com. Thank you for joining. Have a wonderful Shabbos and Yom Tov. And now we will do the Mishnah Yomis for tomorrow.